Welcome to our deep dive. Today we're looking at a really surprising collision. The world of construction, concrete, steel, hard hats meeting, well, the digital frontier of blockchain and crypto.
It seems like two totally different worlds, doesn't it?
Exactly. And you might think of construction as, inherently slow to change. And honestly, our sources, they really back that up. They highlight these traditional challenges, things like low productivity, payment delays that can just cripple cash flow.
Yeah, major issues.
And sadly, significant financial losses, too. We're talking potentially up to 30% of global infrastructure spending just lost to fraud, mismanagement. It's pretty staggering.
It really is. But what's fascinating here and what the sources dig into is how technologies like blockchain, which is essentially, a secure shared digital ledger, and then cryptocurrencies, smart contracts. These aren't just small tech upgrades.
Right.
They're suggesting a really fundamental shift, a potential revolution aimed squarely at fixing these deep-seated, very expensive problems.
Okay, so that's the big picture. Let's unpack the how. You mentioned smart contracts. How do these digital agreements actually impact getting people paid on time? Because that's notorious in construction, right? The delays.
Oh, absolutely. And that's a perfect place to start because, payment security, speed, there are huge pain points the sources focus on.
Yep.
Smart contracts are really key here. Think of them like self-executing digital agreements.
Okay.
You basically code the terms right onto the blockchain. So when certain conditions are met and verified automatically, maybe materials confirmed delivered, or an inspector signs off a milestone digitally.
The payment just goes automatically.
Exactly. The payment linked to that condition is released instantly. It takes out so much of the manual checking, the paperwork sitting on desks, the arguments.
Right, the friction.
Precisely. It cuts down hugely on admin overhead and, frankly, human error, which causes so many delays and disputes. The sources actually give a striking example of this on-chain bank guarantees.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
What's the deal there?
Well, traditionally, getting a bank guarantee, sorting that out, verifying it.
Yeah.
It can take, up to 30 days sometimes? All the paper, the checks.
30 days. That's an eternity on a tight project schedule.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
But this consortium, they moved these guarantees onto a blockchain. And the issuance time, it dropped from that, 30 days down to just 1 day.
Wow, 1 day.
Think about the cash flow difference. And plus, because it's on this secure ledger, everyone can verify it's real. It basically eliminates the fraud risk you get with paper guarantees. That speed, that security.
Yeah.
It's pretty powerful.
Okay. Yeah, that alone is a massive efficiency boost. But let's shift gears a bit. Funding these huge projects, this is where I find it gets really interesting. How can crypto tools possibly help raise money for a physical skyscraper? Or a bridge.
Right, this is where tokenization comes in.
Yeah.
It's this idea where you can represent ownership in a physical asset, could be land, a building, even just a share of a future development as a digital token on a blockchain.
So you're creating digital shares of a real thing. Does that mean fractional ownership is suddenly way easier?
Exactly that. Tokenization makes fractional ownership possible in a way that's just incredibly difficult or very expensive with traditional methods. The sources point out this could massively lower the barrier to entry for investors.
So you don't need millions anymore?
Potentially, no. Instead of needing, say, hundreds of thousands to get into a big real estate deal, you might be able to invest with $1,000, maybe even less.
Okay, that opens things up.
It really does. It opens projects up to a much wider, maybe even global pool of capital, people who just couldn't participate before.
Yeah.
I mean, Deloitte, they're projecting something like $4 trillion in tokenized real estate by 2035.
Yeah.
That gives you a sense of the scale people are thinking about.
For $4 trillion.
Yeah, and also massively boost liquidity. Real estate is notoriously hard to sell quickly, but some reports show tokenization cutting the time to securitize and trade loans from, say, 55 days down to maybe 30 minutes.
30 minutes. That's incredible. Okay, so we've got faster payments, new ways to fund. What about the actual physical stuff? Can these technologies give a digital identity to, a steel beam?
Yes, exactly. This is where NFTs, non-fungible tokens, come into play. But maybe not how you usually hear about them with, digital art.
Right, not Bored Apes.
No. In construction, an NFT can act as a unique, verifiable digital proof of ownership and authenticity for a physical thing. Think of it like a permanent digital passport. Or, as you said earlier, kind of like a nutrition label for a building component.
Oh, a digital label. So it stays with the item What kind of info does it hold? Why is that useful?
It can hold a ton of critical data linked permanently to that specific object. Things like where the material came from, its exact composition, quality certifications, manufacture date, its maintenance history over time, even who owned it when. And this is huge for quality control on site, right? Preventing counterfeit materials getting into the supply chain. And it's also vital for supporting a circular economy, because you know exactly what materials are in a building when it's time to renovate or take it down. Makes identifying things for reuse much, much easier, more transparent.
This all sounds incredibly promising. It feels like it's tackling some really fundamental inefficiencies, some big risks in the industry. So, I mean, what does this all mean, big picture? Is this digital revolution just around the corner, or are there still major hurdles?
Well, if you connect it all up, the promise is definitely tangible. You're looking at potentially faster projects, lower costs, less risk of fraud and disputes, and like we just said, even enabling more sustainable building through better tracking.
Right.
But, and this is where we need to be realistic, implementing it, that raises important questions. The sources definitely highlight real challenges.
Like what? Just getting people to change, the tech side?
Both, really. There's still regulatory uncertainty, the legal side of digital assets, smart contracts in construction. It's still evolving everywhere. And the industry itself, well, it is often slow to adopt new tech. You've got legacy systems, established ways of doing things, maybe a natural risk aversion, given the scale of these projects.
Sure.
And definitely there's a need for new skills. People need to understand how to use these tools effectively.
Okay, so it's not like flipping a switch overnight, but the underlying potential to fix some of these really old, stubborn problems in construction, that seems clear.
Absolutely. These technologies, ultimately, they aren't just about digital money or speculation. They're fundamentally about building trust, transparency, and efficiency into an industry that, frankly, has often struggled with all three.
So this deep dive really shows how blockchain and crypto are trying to zero in on those core construction pain points, speeding up payments, unlocking funding, giving every single beam a traceable history. It makes you think, doesn't it? Leaving you with this final thought. How might our world actually change if the history, the performance, the ownership of every major part of our buildings and every dollar spent creating them was transparently, immutably recorded? How does that change not just how we build, but maybe even our relationship with the spaces we live and work in?